Welcome to speech class. This semester we're going to be going over a lot of different helpful information and tips to improve your public speaking ability. Today we're going to start with some basics. Tip number 1, know your audience. Before you approach any kind of speech event, one of the first things you have to ask is, who is it I'm going to be speaking to? There's certain things you want to know. What is their age? What is their education level, their background? Essentially, what is their knowledge about the topic you're presenting? And what are their interests? When you are putting together your speech, you want to think about, what does my audience already know about this topic? You want to think about, what would they actually be interested in hearing about? You may have, as often you will in this class, the opportunity to select from an array of topics. What would they actually want to know? Other times, you're going to be given your topic, and you're going to ask yourself, what aspect of this topic would this particular audience actually be interested in? And you also have to question, what are they capable of understanding? So you might approach the same topic, say you're talking about recycling, but if you're talking to a group of third graders, you're going to approach it differently than you would if you're talking to a room full of college students, or if you're talking to a room full of executives in a business setting. So your first thing is to know who your audience is. Know the room. You need to understand the space it is that you are going to be working in. You need to know the size. Are you talking about presenting a speech in a small classroom? Are you talking about presenting it in a big auditorium? Are you talking about presenting it at the Apollo Theater? It's going to make a difference. How is it laid out? Are you going to be looking straight forward? Are you going to be surrounded, like in this picture, on 3 sides? You're going to have to be looking at audience members in all of those different places. Is your voice going to reach all the way to the back? Are you going to be mic'd? If you're mic'd, is that going to restrict your movement in any way? Are you going to be up on a platform? Is there any danger zones? For ladies presenting in heels, the cord from the mic can be quite dangerous if you don't have a cordless mic. So these are all the kinds of things that you need to be aware of. What is the space going to be? Where is my audience? If you're using equipment, which most of the time we are now, presenting some kind of PowerPoint or visual image, are you going to be near that image, or are you going to be somewhere else? Are you going to be standing someplace where you can point to things? Or, as happened to me, at one point, the screen was on the other side of the room. I could barely even see it. It also helps give you confidence if you're physically familiar with the room. Whenever possible, if I'm presenting in a new place, I try to get there early and literally walk around the room. It may sound weird, but once I've been everywhere in the room, it gives me ownership of that space. So sometimes I try to make sure no one can see me doing it, or I come up with some other reason why I'm in the far back corner of the room. But physically owning the room can help you project your confidence and your knowledge better. Know your material. This is, of course, very obvious. You need to know what you're talking about. You need to be familiar with it. You need to be confident, which translates into you need to have rehearsed. You need to have practiced. For 99% of the people, when they think they've practiced enough, they haven't. Go for 7 to 10 times for any public speech event that you're giving. That's a minimum. If you're nervous or if you're really unfamiliar with the material, you might want to do even more. This also means know a little bit more than what you're presenting. Hopefully, you'll do such a good job that people will be interested in more information. Now, you don't have to be an expert in the material unless you presented yourself that way, but keep in mind, what kind of questions might someone ask about this? Let me know a little bit more than I'm presenting, so when you're done, you still know a little bit more than your audience. Relax. This is one of those things that is easier said than done. But the ticket to a really good speech is to have prepared, and then when you get up there, relax into it. You know your stuff, you are well prepared, you are confident, so therefore you can just relax. And it may sound weird, but try to enjoy it. When we're giving our speeches, we're often very much focused on ourselves, and that leads to increased anxiety. But this is actually you communicating with people. So try to relax and enjoy that process of communication. You'll enjoy the process better, and you'll actually deliver a better speech that way. Visualize. Visualize yourself doing it and doing well. This may sound like one of those woo-woo, new agey kinds of things, but it actually works. Professional athletes use this technique. Now, don't do this in place of rehearsing. You still have to actually rehearse out loud, but as part of your preparation, really go through, spend a little bit of time. It's almost like a meditation, visualizing yourself exactly how you want to see it done, the level of confidence you're going to have. Visualize yourself in the space if you know ahead of time what it looks like. How are you going to stand behind the podium? How are you going to move across the stage? How are you going to interact with the audience? But actually go through it almost in real time and visualize yourself being successful. Oftentimes, particularly if we're nervous speakers, what we envision is all the disasters that could happen. We need to spend more time visualizing ourselves doing really well. Remember that for the most part, people want you to succeed. There may be times in your life in which you're giving a speech to a hostile audience. Say you are an employer and you're letting your employees know that you're about to reduce their benefits, then you're going to have a hostile audience. But most of the time, the audience is there to hear you. They're invested in your success. The more interesting you are, the better time they're going to have, and they want you to succeed. So no one's sitting there in the audience waiting to throw rotten tomatoes at you. They're waiting for you to entertain them and inform them. And as long as you go at it with that same attitude, your audience is going to be behind you. Don't apologize. Half of the time when we make a mistake, the audience doesn't even know it. It's like driving in a car in an unfamiliar place, and I'm sure many of you have had this experience, and the driver keeps apologizing because, oh, they meant to turn here, oh, they meant to turn there, and they meant to do it this way. And I'm sitting there in the passenger seat saying, I'm just looking out the window. I would have had no idea you made a mistake if you hadn't pointed it out to me. The same thing happens during our speech events. The audience doesn't know what you intended to do, so you don't need to apologize when you've made a mistake. If it's a minor mistake, they may not even notice it, even if it's something that appears glaringly obvious to you. So if your slide doesn't work right, just hit the reverse and keep going. Now, the exception to this is sometimes when something happens that is such a huge disaster that you have to address it or it looks ridiculous. But I'm talking about a huge disaster, not the little minor things that normally happen. If your PowerPoint doesn't work at all, if it suddenly starts going fast and without you and then slow behind you and then speeding up and it's going even when you're not touching the screen, that is something that's so obvious that you are going to have to address that with the audience. But most of the time, all you need to do is stay calm and keep moving forward. Concentrate on your message. And this is particularly true for people who are nervous public speakers. We become anxious because we are focused on ourselves. Instead, think about what it is you're trying to say. Think about your audience as individual people that you're trying to talk to, not as audience members that you're scared of. But really think about, I want to get this information out of me and into the audience. Let me focus on my message. The difference between nervousness and excitement is very, very small. I'm going to play this short clip that I think explains it way better than I could.
Hey there, my friend Cal Kanai here, and I know that I might be interrupting your YouTube experience, but stick with me all the way up until the very end.
We're going to skip that ad.
I was also watching the Olympics. And this is what I realized this when I was watching the London Olympics, so a couple of Olympics ago. And I was annoyed by how all the journalists asked all the athletes the same stupid question. Literally, everyone. Were you nervous? Or are you nervous? When it was before or after the event. Every single time. And every single time, all the athletes gave the exact same answer. No, I was excited. No, I'm excited. Every single time. These elite athletes had learned to interpret body stimulus. What are the signs of nervousness? Your heart races, you visualize the future, your hands get clammy. What are the stimulus for excitement? Your heart races, you visualize the future, your hands get clammy. They had learned to interpret what their body was telling them, not as nerves, but as excitement. And the reason the journalists said, "Were you nervous?" is because they would be nervous. Athletes would never say that to each other. They say, "That was exciting." So I tried it. I did a little test on myself, right? I'm on a plane. We start hitting some really bad turbulence. I go, and then I say to myself, literally out loud, "This is exciting." And I was fine. And I was fine. So I do it a lot now. When I find myself getting nervous, I say to myself, "This is so exciting," and I'll explain the reason to myself why. So, like an actor, you don't get nervous when you go on stage anymore, but occasionally you do. So I get to go on stage a lot, and I don't really get nervous much anymore, but I was going to present to 3,000 chiefs of police right in the middle of all this police brutality hullabaloo. And I got really nervous because the stakes were really high, you know? And I was literally getting nervous backstage. And I said to myself, "This is so exciting. I have an opportunity to talk to a group of people who can actually affect change in this country. This is really exciting." Now, I could have said the same thing. "I'm so nervous. I'm about to talk to people who can..." But the interpretation was exciting. Just change the narrative. It works brilliantly well.
So I could have told you that, but Simon Sinek, who is a brilliant thinker and good public speaker, so a good one to watch for getting helpful tips, he says it so better than I do. Nervousness and excitement are pretty much the same thing. It's just a question of how you look at it. So try to think about that little flutter in your stomach that you get before you give a speech as something that's positive. And in fact, it is. A small amount of nervousness/excitement actually helps us to focus and makes us more likely to do a good job, helps us to tune out the things outside of us and focus on what we're actually doing. Now, this is the one nobody likes to hear, but the way that you become a better speaker is to give lots of speeches. So if you already enjoy public speaking, then this is easy to do, and you just keep doing this, and every time you'll get better and better. If you don't, then you need to do the same thing. Except that usually if we're nervous about public speaking, we try to get out of it. "Oh no, let someone else at my church give that talk. Ooh, let someone else in my group do the presentation." But what you have to do is step up, turn that nervousness into excitement, and give lots of speeches, because the more practice you get, the better you're going to be at it. It's like an athlete. If you're a tennis player and you're not good at backhand, you don't say, "Oh, well, I just won't use backhand." What the athletes do is they go out and they practice their backhand for hours on end until they get better. That's the same thing you have to do with public speaking. And that's it. Those are my basic tips. Hopefully they will get you started well, and we will continue to improve on your speech journey.